October 23, 1942. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. The hot, wet air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and rotting plants. Corporal James Mitchell from the 1st Marine Division, 1st Regiment, knelt beside a dead Japanese soldier, near the long defense line. His hands shook a little, not because he was scared, but because he was so tired after fighting for 3 days straight. The fight for Henderson Field had started. Beside the body, he saw something strange, a shiny Type 100 submachine gun with a chrome barrel that glowed in the soft light. The gun looked new and well made, with clear marks and a magazine on the side. Mitchell looked at the fine work, noticed the moving sights, the bipod spots, and the bayonet clip. His M1 Garand weighed about 11 pounds with the bayonet and sling, and it felt heavy after months of hard jungle fighting. For a moment, he thought about switching guns. Then he made the same choice that many Marines would make across the Pacific. He left the Japanese gun and kept his Garand. That small choice, made again and again in many battles, showed big truths about war ideas and technology. The Japanese thought they made a better gun. It was lighter, it fired faster, and held more bullets. But the Marines always kept their own rifles instead of taking the captured guns. What they knew without study would take historians years to understand. Real fighting power did not come from how fast a gun could shoot or how new it looked. It came from other things. The numbers behind this choice told the story of two very different ways to fight war. One cared more about new ideas than about what really worked. The other trusted what was tested and strong in jungle battles where a broken gun meant death. That choice mattered most. This story did not start with battle, but with two nations building weapons in their own ways across the ocean. In January 1936, after long tests and talks, the U.S. Army chose the M1 Garand as its main rifle, and that choice changed military history forever. For the first time, a major military power would give all its frontline troops semi-automatic rifles instead of bolt-action weapons. The road to this change was not smooth or certain. John C. Garand, a Canadian-born engineer, joined Springfield Armory in Massachusetts in 1919 and brought ideas about gas-operated rifle actions that would change infantry fighting. Garand was a careful designer and a perfectionist who knew both machines and what soldiers needed. His early designs, failed tests, and changes in ammo forced full redesigns. Army leaders asked if soldiers really needed semi-automatic fire, and budget problems almost ended the program. But Garand kept working and improved his design. Through the 1920s and early 1930s, his rifle used a gas-operated rotating bolt. When fired, gas from the barrel went through a port and pushed a piston that moved the bolt. The bolt turned to unlock, then pulled out the used cartridge, threw it away, and loaded a new round from an 8-round en-bloc clip. The whole cycle happened in a fraction of a second, letting a trained shooter fire as fast as he could pull the trigger while keeping his aim. The M1 Garand used the powerful 30-06 Springfield cartridge, the same ammo used in the bolt-action M1903 Springfield rifle. This 30 caliber round was standardized in 1906, so it is called 30-06. It fired a 150-grain bullet at about 2,850 feet per second and made about 2,650 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. This gave the round great range power and ability to penetrate. The choice to keep this caliber made ammo work across the whole U.S. arsenal and kept the stopping power U.S. planners wanted. The rifle itself weighed 5 pounds unloaded and about 11.2 pounds with a loaded clip bayonet and sling. It was 43.6 inches long with a 24-inch barrel. The walnut stock and steel parts made it strong and long-lasting. The adjustable rear aperture sight let a shooter aim precisely. At different distances, a trained rifleman could hit targets past 500 yards, though most fighting was much closer. General George S. Patton later called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. This famous praise came in a letter written to Major General Levin Campbell, Chief of Ordnance, on January 26, 1945. But back in 1942, when the 1st Marine Division landed on Guadalcanal in August, that praise was still only words. Many Marines still carried the older M1903 Springfield bolt-action rifles. The M1 Garand was still hard to get. Production was growing slowly. The Marine Corps decided to bring it in step by step, giving it first to support units while they tested how it worked in rough island battles. But the Marines who did get the Garand quickly loved it. They learned that when they pulled the trigger, it fired every time. When they aimed right, the rifle hit its target. When the .30-06 round struck an enemy, he went down and did not get back up across the ocean. Japan was taking a completely different path in weapon design. During the 1930s, Japanese war planning focused on three main things hitting targets from far away, with rifles charging with bayonets up close and using machine guns for support. The idea of a submachine gun which fired pistol bullets very fast did not interest Japanese leaders who followed very old military traditions. The Japanese Army had bought small numbers of European submachine guns in the 1920s and early 1930s, about 450 to 500 Swiss, made Sig Bergmann 1920 guns based on the German MP-18 went into Japanese service. They fired 7.63 by 25 mm Mauser rounds. A few Austrian-made Steyr, Solothurn, 100 submachine guns were also used. These guns were studied, tested, and mostly rejected as special weapons that did not fit Japanese battle plans. But things started to change. Fast in 1937, when Japanese troops met Chinese soldiers using submachine guns with great success in the Second Sino-Japanese War. The Battle of Shanghai, which lasted from August 13th to November 26, 1937, taught them an important lesson. In tight city fighting, the Chinese soldiers using different submachine guns could fire very fast at close range during street battles. Japanese troops who mostly used bolt-action Type 38 rifles were badly outgunned in these tight fights. From building to building, the shock of what happened in Shanghai made Japanese war planners rethink their ideas. Right after seeing how well Chinese soldiers used submachine guns in city fighting. In August 1937, the Imperial Japanese Army began making their own submachine gun. Lieutenant General Kijiro Nambu, who had designed the well-known Nambu pistol, was told to build a Japanese version based on the Bergmann guns they had studied. They tested several trial models. The experimental Model 3 came out in TD-THU 1938, followed by Models 3B and 3C in 1939. Finally, in 1940, the Imperial Japanese Army officially accepted the gun as the Type 100 submachine gun. The name Type 100 came from the Japanese imperial year. 2600, the Type 100 used the 8mm Nambu cartridge, also called 8 by 22mm Nambu. This pistol bullet weighed about 102 grains and moved around 1030 feet per second, making only about 242 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. That was less than 1/10 the power of the .30-06 bullet used in the M1 Garand. The weak round meant the gun was only good up to about 150 meters in perfect conditions, and much less in real fighting. The gun used a simple blowback system that fired from an open bolt. The rate of fire changed between versions. The early Type 100 fired about 450 rounds per minute, while the later Type 144 version fired about 800 rounds per minute. The gun used a curved 30-round magazine that went in from the left side. This sideways setup made it hard to handle in small spaces. The Type 100 was made at Kokura Arsenal and Nagoya Arsenal and built by the Nambu Arms Company. The total number made is not fully known because wartime records were lost. Japanese historian Shigeo Sugawa reported that around 10,000 were made, with almost 9,000 of those being the later, simpler model. Some Western writers think as many as 30,000 Type 100 guns were made, but Japanese records show that closer to 10,000 is more likely. The Type 100 had many design problems that showed up fast in real battle. The heavy bayonet lug and bipod mounts added useless weight and made it harder to build. The sideways magazine made it hard to shoot from behind cover. The safety switch often failed. The rear sight was marked up to 1,500 meters, even though the gun could not shoot anywhere near that far. The biggest problem was the weak 8mm Nambu bullet, which had little power and poor penetration. As the war went on, the quality of the guns dropped sharply. The first ones were built fairly well, but by 1944 and 1945, when Japanese factories were being bombed and cut off from supplies, the guns became rough and cheap. Barrels lost their chrome lining. Wooden stocks were replaced with rough parts. The metalwork was sloppy, and the pieces did not always fit right, making the guns unreliable. The Japanese Army also never really liked or supported submachine guns. Production stayed small, and most Type 100s went to special units. Paratroopers got a version with a folding stock. Naval Special Landing Forces, which were like Japanese Marines, got a few tank crews sometimes carried them, but regular soldiers almost never saw them. So when U.S. Marines met Japanese troops on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, and other islands, the Type 100 was still rare. When Marines found one either captured or taken from fallen soldiers, they almost always decided not to use it. After checking it out, they quickly saw why in the short-range battles of the Pacific. From about 100 to 300 yards, the Type 100 could not hit targets that the M1 Garand could easily destroy with careful aim. The weak 8mm Nambu bullet could not go through even thin cover, while the powerful 30-06 round from the Garand punched through it without trouble. Dense jungle vegetation that barely slowed, the powerful Garand round would deflect the weak pistol cartridge. In close quarters combat, where the Type 100 should theoretically have excelled, practical realities intervened. The horizontal magazine snagged on doorways, vegetation, and equipment. The crude sights made accurate shooting nearly impossible. The unreliable safety led to accidental discharges or failures to fire when needed. Most critically, Marines had no reliable source of 8mm TT. Nambu ammunition. Using a captured weapon meant depending on captured ammunition, a risk no Marine would willingly take when his life depended on his weapon functioning. The M1 Garand, by contrast, offered Marines everything they needed for survival in Pacific combat. The semi-automatic action allowed rapid aimed fire without losing sight picture. A trained Marine could deliver 8 rounds accurately in less than 10 seconds, then reload with a fresh aim block clip in under 3 seconds. The powerful 30-06 cartridge could penetrate Japanese bunkers, destroy light fortifications, and stop enemy soldiers instantly at any practical combat range. Reliability proved paramount in the harsh Pacific environment. The Garand functioned in mud, sand, salt water, and jungle humidity that would have destroyed more delicate weapons. The gas system, while requiring maintenance, proved remarkably tolerant of fouling. The operating rod and bolt could be cleared and lubricated in seconds. Parts were completely interchangeable between rifles. Every Marine knew that his Garand would fire when he pulled the trigger, regardless of conditions. The ammunition supply system reinforced this reliability. The 306 cartridge was manufactured by the millions in dozens of American factories. Every round met strict specifications. Every clip functioned identically. Supply lines, despite the vast Pacific distances, ensured continuous ammunition availability. Marines never worried about running out of 306 ammunition. They never questioned whether a round would fire or function properly. Training created the final advantage. Every Marine learned to shoot, clean, maintain, and repair the M1 Garand during basic training. They understood the weapon intimately. They could disassemble and reassemble it, blindfolded. The Garand fired strong and reliable, while the Type 100 was weak and unreliable. They knew what their rifle could do and what it could not do. They trusted it because they understood it. The Type 100 was a mystery, a foreign gun with strange parts and uncertain performance. The difference went far beyond the weapons themselves. It also showed the huge gap between the factories that made them American. Industry built M1 Garands by the millions. Springfield Armory in Massachusetts and Winchester. Repeating arms made the rifles under government contracts all through World War II. The quality stayed high from start to finish. Every Garand could be used with parts from any other Garand. Every single piece was the same, and every rifle worked. American mass production showed the top level of industrial skill and power. Japanese factories, however, were breaking down under war pressure. Their supplies were cut off by submarines, and their cities were bombed from the air. They lacked raw materials and could only make Type 100 guns in small groups, with dropping quality. The first ones looked fine and worked okay, but the later ones showed rough work, bad welding, weak materials, and low standards. In trying to make more guns faster, they made them worse. The Type 100 showed the fall of Japanese factory power. This also showed how different the two nations thought about building things. America focused on mass production with standard parts that always fit together. They cared about quality checks and making sure every weapon worked. The same, Japan's production was based more on handwork and old craft styles which could not survive. The strain of total war supplies ran out. Skilled workers were taken to fight. Factories were bombed and the whole system broke down. The guns they made showed that collapse. The Marines could feel these differences without needing to study them. When they fired their Garand, it worked. When they aimed at the enemy, it hit. When they hit the enemy, he stayed down. When they needed to shoot far at 300 yards, the Garand delivered. When the rifle got dirty, wet, or full of mud, it still fired. These sure things kept Marines alive. The Type 100 gave no real confidence. It was a gamble, a guess, a risk. And in battle, Marines never risked their lives on maybes. The story of that choice went far beyond World War II and shaped later military weapons. The M1 Garand stayed in American service all through the Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, and once again it proved better than submachine guns in almost every fight. That rifle later inspired the M14, which was basically a modernized Garand, with a 20-round magazine and the option to fire semi-automatic or full automatic. The Garand's main ideas of being strong, reliable, and effective became the model for American rifles for many years after the Type 100, meanwhile faded into history. After Japan's surrender in August 1945, American occupation officials gave the remaining Type 100s to Japanese police, since its flaws mattered less for police use than in war. Only a few still exist today, in museums or private collections. Most were destroyed, lost, or forgotten, as Japan rebuilt. The Type 100 became a small note in the story of military weapons, a lesson about how a design that looks good on paper can still fail in the field. Modern experts who study both guns agree completely the Marines made the right choice. the M1 Garand stood at the top of its time. It had great power, was very dependable, and worked well in every kind of fight. It was the best rifle the American infantry could have. The Japanese Type 100. Though not a bad design for Japan's needs, just could not match the Garand in real combat. Marines, who refused to use captured Type 100s and stuck with their own rifles, were making smart choices based on what worked, not on what looked good in theory. The facts and results prove they were absolutely right. The M1 Garand played a key part in every big Marine fight across the Pacific. The battles of Guadalcanal from August 1942 to February 9, 1943, Tarawa from November 20 to 23, 1943, Saipan from June 15 to July 9, 1944, Peleliu from September 15 to November 27, 1944, Iwo Jima from February 19 to March 26, 1945, and Okinawa from April 1 to June 22, 1945, all showed how powerful this rifle really was in every one of those battles. Marines, with Garands, won again and again, even against tough, well-trained, and fiercely loyal enemies fighting in terrible jungles, heat, mud, and rain. The Type 100, on the other hand, even though thousands were made, barely mattered at all in the war. Its design, problems, low numbers, and poor supply made it more of a strange side weapon than something that could change battles. Japan would have done better building more rifles or machine guns instead of wasting time and supplies on a weak submachine gun. That didn't fit their real needs. The truth of how different these weapons were came out in hard fighting and blood. During the battle for Henderson Field, from October 23 to 26, 1942, Marines from the 7th Marine Regiment fought off huge Japanese attacks trying to retake the airfield. In that brutal fight, Marines using the M1 Garand were able to hit enemy soldiers from far away, where Japanese rifles could barely reach. The Garand's fast semi-automatic fire let Marines shoot quickly and stop Japanese soldiers before they could get close. Private First Class Mitchell Page held a machine gun post during the battle and later won the Medal of Honor for his bravery. When nearby Marines were overrun, he and the Garand armed riflemen beside him stayed firm. Their steady, accurate fire stopped the Japanese from breaking through. Page later said that the Garand's firepower helped save his position. Another hero from that same fight, Sergeant John Basilone, also earned the Medal of Honor for his incredible defense. Sergeant John Basilone saw how powerful the M1 Garand was right in front of him. Even though he was mainly a machine gunner, he noticed how Marines with semi-automatic rifles could keep steady fire going while others moved up. This kind of teamwork was impossible with old bolt-action rifles, and it changed how small Marine units fought across the Pacific. As battles went on, Marines grew more confident in their Garands. At first, some worried the rifles might jam in wet, sandy beach landings, but those doubts vanished once the guns proved themselves in real combat. By the time of the Tarawa invasion in November 1943, Marines had learned how to use the Garand to its fullest. Fire teams worked in pairs, one Marine shooting while another reloaded, so they could keep up non-stop fire. The 8-round clips and quick reloads let them move forward safely under their own cover. During the Battle of Saipan in June and July 1944, the M1 Garand showed how flexible it could be. Marines fought from beaches to hills, hitting enemies from just a few feet away to over 400 yards. In open cane fields, they could pick off Japanese snipers at long range. In the caves and rocky areas of Mount Taposh the Strong, 30-06 bullets were needed to break through solid defenses. Captain Lewis H. Wilson, who later became Commandant of the Marine Corps, won the Medal of Honor on Guam in July 1944. Leading his men up Fonte Hill, he used his Garand with deadly accuracy. Knocking out several Japanese positions, his award even mentioned how well he used his rifle to lead the attack. His story was just one of many, where a Marine and his Garand made the difference in battle. The Japanese military itself admitted this. Truth in reports they wrote after capturing American weapons. They recognized the M1 Garand as far stronger and more effective than anything they had. A translated Japanese training paper from 1944 warned soldiers that American semi-automatic rifles could shoot with deadly power. It told Japanese troops not to get into long-range gunfights with Americans. Instead, it suggested night attacks and close fighting as the only ways to deal with Marines using those rifles. This showed they knew the Type 100 submachine gun was not good enough. The treated numbers from 1944 made the difference even clearer. Springfield Armory in the U.S. made more M1 Garands in one single month than Japan made Type 100s in a whole year. Winchester's monthly output alone beat Japan's total war production of all submachine guns. These facts meant that on the battlefield, every Marine unit had much more firepower than even large Japanese units, mainly because of the power and supply of the M1 Garand. The Battle of Peleliu from September to November 1944 proved this clearly. The 1st Marine Division fought Japanese troops who now hid in strong cave systems instead of charging openly. It turned into a slow, painful fight where accuracy and power mattered most. The M1 Garand could shoot straight into small cave openings from far away, and its .30-06 bullets could punch through rock walls and makeshift shields. Private First Class Richard Krause showed what one Marine with a Garand could do. When his squad got trapped by heavy fire, he moved forward, alone using his rifle to destroy several enemy positions before being killed. His fast and accurate shots while moving would have been impossible with a bolt-action rifle and deadly foolish with a short-range submachine gun. In the Philippines Campaign of 1944 and 1945, some Japanese troops, mostly naval soldiers in Manila, used Type 100s. But even in city fighting, where those guns should have worked best, they still failed against the firepower and reach of American weapons Marines. And soldiers with M1 Garands could shoot through walls and defenses that easily stopped pistol bullets. The weak 8mm Nambu round couldn't even go through simple things like wooden doors or furniture that Americans used for cover American weapon. Experts later proved this in tests at Aberdeen Proving Ground, where they compared captured Type 100s with M1 Garands. The results were completely one-sided. In accuracy tests at 100 yards, the Garand kept all its shots within about 4 inches, while the Type 100 barely hit the target at all. In penetration tests, the .30-06 bullet from the Garand went through more than 30 inches of pine boards, but the Nambu round didn't even reach 8 inches. In reliability tests, the Garand kept working after being soaked in mud, sand, and water, while the Type 100 stopped working fast. In endurance tests, the Garand fired thousands of rounds with little care, while the Type 100 jammed again and again after only a few hundred rounds. Cold weather tests for use in northern Japan or Korea showed that the Garand worked fine even at -20 degrees, but the Type 100's open bolt froze solid. The experts all agreed the Type 100 wasn't any better than old World War I guns, and was worse than newer ones like the British Sten or Soviet PPSH-41. They also said the M1 Garand was far better for Pacific fighting than any submachine gun could ever be. Veterans from the Battle of Iwo Jima in February and March 1945 kept saying the M1 Garand saved lives and helped win. The island's fine volcanic ash got into every weapon and made it hard to keep clean. Still, the Garand kept working even when more delicate guns stopped. Marines could clean it fast, and get back to fighting. Out of the 27 Medals of Honor given for Iwo Jima, many talked about how accurate rifle fire helped win fights, showing how important the M1 Garand was for single Marines. Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, who had already earned the Medal of Honor at Guadalcanal, was killed at Iwo Jima while leading an attack. After his machine gun was destroyed, he grabbed an M1 Garand and kept firing as he led his men forward. His death showed that even the best weapon couldn't always save a soldier, but it also proved the Garand gave Marines their best chance in battle. The last big Pacific fight at Okinawa, from April to June 1945, showed the M1 Garand at its very best. The 10th Army, made of both Marines and Army troops, used huge firepower against Japanese positions. Soldiers with Garands could hit targets over 400 yards away in the open southern fields, and in the tight Shuri line fights, the strong .30-06 bullets stopped even the toughest Japanese defenders. The Japanese 32nd Army there used many types of guns, including the Type 100, but they didn't matter. American battle reports almost never talked about Japanese submachine guns, only about artillery mortars and heavy machine guns. The Type 100 had become so useless that some Japanese units didn't even bother giving them out, even when they had them. The ammo use at Okinawa showed America's power. Marines and soldiers fired over 200 million .30-06 bullets in 82 days, more than double all the 8mm Nambu rounds Japan made during the whole war. Many Marines used more ammo in one day than a Japanese soldier got for a whole mission. This huge use of ammo, which the Japanese could never match, showed how sure the Americans were that more supplies would always come. After the war, the United States Strategic Bombing Survey studied everything and proved that America's massive factories made the real difference in making small arms. The report said, Japan never built the kind of industry needed for modern war. Japanese workers could make good single weapons by hand, but they could not make enough for a big world fight. The Type 100 showed that failure because it took too many skilled workers to make too few weak guns. The Korean War from 1950 to 1953 proved again how much better the M1 Garand was than any submachine gun. When North Korean and Chinese soldiers attacked with Soviet PPSH-41 and PPS-43 submachine guns, American and United Nations troops with M1 Garands always won in long-range fights. The Garand's strong power and accuracy over distance made all the difference in the Korean mountains, where most battles happened farther away. Veterans from World War II who fought in Korea said the enemy fought just like the Japanese, using big, close attacks to try to cancel American firepower, but the Garand's range and power always stopped them. At the frozen Chosin Reservoir in November and December 1950, Marines fought in temperatures as low as 35 below zero, and the Garand still worked when many other weapons jammed. In 1954, when Japan built its new self-defense forces, they completely dropped the old Type 100 and instead took American M1 Garands given through aid programs showing they clearly knew which gun was better. Even former Japanese Army officers who helped build the new forces said they chose the Garand because it was more reliable and much more effective. They had learned through hard experience what really worked in modern fighting. When people study the few Type 100s left in museums, they can clearly see the design mistakes. The sideways magazine that was supposed to help soldiers fire while lying down actually made the gun clumsy in almost every position. The fancy bayonet mount showed Japan's old focus on sword-style fighting, but only added extra weight and made it harder to build. The back sight that went up to unrealistic ranges showed how far the design was from real battlefield needs. When American experts translated the Japanese Type 100 manuals after the war, they found the instructions made no sense. The manuals said soldiers could shoot accurately out to 400 meters, which was impossible. With that weak bullet, they told troops to fire single shots instead of bursts to save ammo, which took away the whole point of having an automatic gun. These mixed messages proved that Japanese commanders never really understood how to use modern automatic weapons. Cost made things worse. The M1 Garand cost the U.S. about $85 in 1943, while the Type 100 cost Japan around $110, even though it was weaker. The Japanese spent more money and labor to make a gun that did less. This waste across all war production helped lead to Japan's defeat. The human cost showed the same truth. Marines using M1 Garands almost always came out ahead, often killing 10 or more Japanese soldiers for every American lost. Better training tactics and air power helped, but the strong, reliable Garand made a huge difference. Every Marine carried more firepower alone than several Japanese troops with bolt-action rifles or poor submachine guns. The easy care and simple maintenance of the Garand gave Americans one more major edge. The M1 Garand needed only simple cleaning and oiling that any Marine could do with the issued kit. Taking it apart for basic care in the field took less than a minute. Full disassembly for depot-level maintenance was almost never needed. The Type 100, by contrast, needed complicated disassembly just for basic cleaning with many small parts that could easily be lost or broken. Its open bolt design quickly got clogged with dirt, sand, and debris in field conditions, requiring constant, complicated care that Japanese soldiers often could not manage. Spare parts made a huge difference for Americans. Every Marine battalion had armorers with full parts for M1 Garands. Any broken rifle could be fixed fast or replaced from stockpiles. Japanese troops rarely had spare parts for Type 100s. A broken gun became useless. Plus, parts from different production batches might not even fit, so even small damage could put a Type 100 out of action. Weather and climate gave the Garand another big edge. It worked in freezing mountains of northern Luzon, hot, humid jungles of New Guinea, dusty coral islands like Tarawa, and the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima. Its enclosed mechanism kept dirt and moisture out. The Type 100's open bolt left the action exposed. Humidity caused rust quickly. Sand and dust jammed it immediately. Salt spray from landings corroded steel in hours. In night fighting, the Garand had more hidden benefits. Its strong .30-06 muzzle flash, while giving away the shooter, also briefly blinded enemies up close. The sound of the rifle firing helped Marines identify friends in the dark. The ping of an ejecting clip, sometimes thought to reveal an empty rifle, was lost in battlefield noise. Japanese veterans said, after the war, they never noticed or exploited this so-called weakness. The Type 100's muzzle flash and sound were weak and unimpressive. Its quiet report and small flash did little to scare or suppress enemies at night. The low visibility made it hard to spot targets in darkness. Its rate of fire, whether fast or slow, depending on the model, used up limited ammo quickly, but did not give better combat results. The Americans had another advantage with special ammo. Marines could use armor-piercing .30-06 rounds to hit Japanese light. Vehicles and fortifications tracer rounds helped aim and measure distance. Incendiary rounds could set enemy positions on fire. The 8mm Nambu cartridge only existed as standard bullets, and no special ammo ever reached frontline Japanese troops. This limited what the Type 100 could do and made it even less useful. In small unit fights, the difference was huge. American squads with Garand rifles had enough firepower to operate on their own Japanese squads with mostly bolt-action rifles, and maybe one Type 100 could not match that firepower. This forced Japanese troops to fight in larger groups, which made them easy targets for American artillery and air attacks. The M1 Garand's superiority gave Americans both tactical and strategic advantages. Reports on morale showed the psychological effect, too. Captured Japanese soldiers often said, "The volume and accuracy of American rifle fire was overwhelming." One Marine could make it feel like a much bigger force. Japanese officers said it was hard to keep morale high when troops realized their guns were inferior. The Type 100, instead of making soldiers confident, often lowered morale because troops saw how weak it was. Medical needs also reflected this difference. Marine units needed fewer medical supplies because fewer of their men were hit, thanks to the Garand Japanese. Units needed many more supplies because their weak weapons caused more casualties before they could succeed. The 8mm Nambu had very weak stopping power. Enemy soldiers often needed multiple hits to go down, which wasted ammo and made fights last longer, causing more casualties on both sides. American intelligence intercepted Japanese radio messages showing frustration with their weapons. The messages repeatedly asked for more ammo, which never arrived. Officers complained about malfunctions, and weak firepower requests for extra automatic guns went unanswered because Japan could not produce enough. These intercepts confirmed what Marines saw in battle. The Japanese knew their weapons were inferior, but could do nothing to fix it. Japan surrendered in August 1945, ending the Pacific War before the planned invasion of the home islands called Operation Downfall. That invasion would have put millions of American soldiers and Marines armed with M1 Garands against the few remaining Japanese forces. Intelligence. Estimated Japan had fewer than 5,000 working Type 100s for home defense. The invasion would have clearly shown the huge advantage of American weapons, and industry veterans returning from the Pacific all agreed. The M1 Garand was far better than the Type 100 in hundreds of interviews, memoirs, and oral histories. No Marine said they would have preferred the Japanese submachine gun. Many looked at captured Type 100s out of curiosity. Some even test-fired them with captured ammo. But none thought to use one in real combat. The verdict was unanimous. The M1 Garand was the best infantry rifle of the war. Its legacy continues in modern military thinking about small arms. The Garand proved that giving a soldier accurate, powerful fire at long range creates decisive tactical advantages. The Type 100 showed that guns that look good on paper mean nothing if they fail in practice. Today, modern assault rifles try to mix the Garand's power and accuracy with submachine gun automatic fire. But the main lesson remains: reliability and real effectiveness matter more than fancy features. Military museums worldwide display M1 Garands as examples of excellent rifle design. Even after 80 years, many still function, showing the strength of their construction and smart engineering. The Type 100s rarely appear in museums, usually only as curiosities showing unusual or failed designs. When displayed side by side, the difference is clear. The Garand looks solid and purposeful, while the Type 100 appears awkward and complicated. Collectors reflect this historical judgment. M1 Garands sell for high prices as historically important, reliable weapons. Type 100s, when they are available at all, mostly interest collectors of rare or unusual guns. Very few transferable Type 100s exist in the United States, and they are valued more for rarity than for historical significance or shooting ability. Ammo shortages make firing them impractical. 30-06 rounds for Garands remain easy to find. Modern military historians studying the Pacific War consistently conclude that American material superiority, including weapons like the M1 Garand, was as decisive as superior tactics or strategy. Giving every Marine a reliable, powerful rifle created advantages no Japanese courage or determination could overcome. The Type 100 showed the Japanese military's inability to compete in modern industrial warfare. The final verdict comes from those who were there. Marine Corporal James Mitchell, who chose the M1 Garand over a Type 100 on Guadalcanal in October 1942, survived the war and lived to 91. Asked decades later about his decision, Mitchell said he never even considered taking the Japanese gun because his Garand had never let him down, and he trusted it completely. That trust, shared by hundreds of thousands of Marines and soldiers, helped win the Pacific War. The math was simple. One Marine with an M1 Garand had more effective firepower than several Japanese soldiers with any mix of weapons. That individual advantage, multiplied across entire divisions, created overwhelming tactical strength. Those tactical advantages, repeated across dozens of island battles, led to strategic victory. The M1 Garand was not just the greatest battle tool ever made. As Patton said, it was a war-winning weapon that proved American industrial democracy could outproduce and outfight totalitarian enemies. When the last Marines left Japan after occupation duty in the late 1940s, they brought their Garands home, many purchased their service rifles through the Director of Civilian Marksmanship program, keeping the weapons that had kept them alive. These rifles became family heirlooms, passed down to children and grandchildren with stories of Pacific battles. The Type 100s remained in Japan, most destroyed during occupation, others left to rust in forgotten warehouses, unwanted reminders of defeat and technological failure. The comparison between M1 Garand and Type 100 goes beyond technical specs or battlefield performance. It shows the difference between democratic industrial strength and authoritarian limitations, between practical engineering and impractical tradition, between weapons made for users and weapons forced on users. Marines chose the M1 Garand because it worked. They rejected the Type 100 because it didn't. In war, that simple difference meant victory or defeat, survival or death, coming home or remaining forever on some Pacific Island production numbers tell the story of industrial power versus failure. Between 1936 and 1945, American factories produced about 5.44 million M1 Garands. Springfield Armory made 3,500,000, Winchester contributed 513,880, and International Harvester and Harrington-Richardson added more during the Korean War era. This huge production happened while America also built Sherman tanks, B-29 bombers, Liberty ships, and every other tool of modern warfare. Japan produced at most 30,000 Type 100s, more likely only 10,000 according to their records. This was less than 1% of American rifle production for a weapon meant to give superiority. In close combat, the numbers show the futility of Japanese attempts to match American industry. Every statistical comparison favored Americans by overwhelming margins that tactical skill alone could never overcome. The final accounting came in casualties. Throughout the Pacific War, Marine units armed mainly with M1 Garands achieved kill ratios exceeding 10-to-1 against Japanese forces. While superior supporting arms contributed to this gap, the individual superiority of the Marine rifleman with his Garand formed the foundation of tactical success. The Type 100, in the few engagements where it appeared, made no measurable difference to these ratios. It remained a footnote in battle reports, which focused on the decisive superiority of American firepower. That choice, made by individual Marines like Corporal Mitchell on October 23, 1942, validated years of development, millions of dollars of investment, and revolutionary changes in military doctrine. Every time a Marine squeezed the trigger of his Garand and watched an enemy fall, He confirmed that American military planners had made the right decision. Every Type 100 abandoned on Pacific battlefields testified that Japanese military leadership had failed their soldiers by providing inadequate weapons for modern war. The story ends where it began, with individual Marines making individual choices based on hard experience. They chose the weapon that gave them the best chance of survival and victory. They chose overwhelming firepower over sophistication. They chose American industrial might over Japanese martial tradition. They chose the M1 Garand, and that choice helped them win the Pacific War at Tarawa. The 2nd Marine Division encountered Japanese forces equipped with a mixture of weapons, including limited numbers of Type 100 submachine guns issued to Naval Special Landing Forces defending the island. In the brutal 76 hours of combat, these weapons proved utterly inadequate against Marines armed with M1 Garands. The Japanese defenders, forced to fight from fixed positions, could not exploit the submachine gun's theoretical advantage in close combat. Meanwhile, Marines could engage and destroy Japanese positions at ranges where the Type 100 could not even reach. The testimony of Marines who fought across the Pacific consistently emphasized the Garand's superiority. Staff Sergeant James E. Burns of the 5th Marine Division, who fought at Iwo, later recalled that captured Japanese weapons were viewed as curiosities rather than practical alternatives, increasingly scarce due to Allied blockades and other materials that strained an already overstretched wartime economy. The logistical burden of supplying Japanese factories with these components further slowed production and reduced overall quality. Every M1 Garand, by contrast, could be manufactured with abundant domestic resources, standardized parts, and streamlined assembly methods, ensuring consistent reliability and output. This stark contrast in industrial capability reinforced battlefield outcomes. Marines might examine captured Type 100s out of professional interest, but none would seriously consider using one in combat. The weak report of the 8mm Nambu cartridge, barely audible over the thunder of American .30-06 fire, became a joke among Marines who nicknamed it the woodpecker gun. Technical analysis by American ordnance experts who tested captured Type 100s confirmed what Marines knew instinctively. Reports filed by Aberdeen, proving ground after testing, noted numerous deficiencies. The horizontal magazine position made prone firing difficult and exposed the shooter when firing around corners. The complex manufacturing process required skilled workers that Japan increasingly lacked. The selective fire capability of later models proved useless given the weapon's poor controllability. In full automatic fire intelligence reports from interrogated Japanese prisoners revealed their own military's lack of confidence. In the Type 100, Japanese officers complained about inadequate ammunition supply, with some units receiving only 60 rounds per weapon for an entire operation. Training with the weapon remained minimal, with most troops never firing more than a few magazines before entering combat. Japanese after-action reports captured after the war acknowledged that the Type 100 failed to provide any significant tactical advantage. The industrial mathematics told an even starker story. To produce one Type 100 required approximately 45 man-hours of skilled labor in 1940, increasing to over 60 hours by 1944 as simplified production methods actually complicated assembly. An M1 Garand required approximately 9 man-hours of mostly semi-skilled labor, with that figure dropping to under 6 hours by 1944. As production methods improved, American workers could produce 7 M1 Garands in the time Japanese workers needed for one Type 100, and the Garand was infinitely more effective in combat. Supply chain analysis revealed additional disparities. The M1 Garand used commonly available materials that American industry could source domestically. The Type 100 required specialized steel alloys that Japan had to import, chrome that became increasingly scarce, and other rare resources. making consistent production nearly impossible, increasingly scarce, and precision machinery that bombing progressively destroyed. Every B-29 raid on Japanese industrial centers further reduced Type 100 production quality. While American production centers remained untouched by enemy action, the ammunition situation presented perhaps the starkest contrast. American industry produced approximately 47 billion rounds of small arms ammunition during World War II, including over 10 billion rounds of 30-06. Japanese production of 8mm Nambu ammunition totaled less than 100 million rounds for all weapons using that cartridge. Including pistols, Marines in the Pacific could expend ammunition freely. Knowing that unlimited supplies would arrive with each convoy, Japanese forces hoarded every round, knowing that resupply was uncertain at best. Training doctrine reflected these realities. Marine Corps marksmanship training emphasized accurate, aimed fire at extended ranges. Every Marine qualified with the M1 Garand at distances up to 500 yards. The Marine Corps motto, "Every Marine a rifleman," meant that even cooks, clerks, and drivers could effectively use the Garand in combat. Japanese training for the Type 100, when it occurred at all, consisted primarily of familiarization rather than serious marksmanship. Most Japanese soldiers who carried Type 100s had fired fewer than 100 rounds in training. The psychological impact extended. Beyond technical capabilities, Marines developed absolute confidence in their weapons through extensive training and successful combat experience. They knew their Garands would function in any conditions, deliver devastating firepower, and give them decisive advantages in firefights. This confidence translated into aggressive tactics, willingness to engage at longer ranges, and superior small unit performance. Japanese forces, conversely, understood their equipment's limitations. Captured Japanese documents revealed pessimism about their small arms compared to American weapons. 1. Japanese officer's diary, captured. On Saipan noted with despair that American rifles could kill at ranges where Japanese soldiers could not even return effective fire. This difference in technology made the Japanese rely more and more on suicidal banzai attacks, desperate efforts to get close where their weaker weapons might actually work. Medical evidence clearly showed how effective the weapons really were. Marine Corps medical staff documented that wounds from 30-06 rounds usually stopped a soldier immediately, causing massive tissue damage and hydrostatic shock. The fast speed and high energy of the round made very serious wound channels. Japanese medical staff treating wounds from 8mm Nambu rounds noticed that enemies often needed several hits to stop, with injuries often not fatal if treated quickly. Supply planning showed a clear understanding of these facts. Marine Corps' supply rules gave plenty of ammunition for units with M1 Garand rifles, usually 300 rounds per rifle as a basic load, with unlimited resupply if needed. Japanese rules for Type 100 units gave only 120 rounds per weapon, and resupply was uncertain. These differences in ammo reflected not just factory capacity, but also a deep understanding of what the weapon could do and how it should be used. The story shows a timeless lesson about military technology that still matters today. Being advanced is not the same as being effective. Modern does not mean better. Features do not equal real usefulness. Complexity does not guarantee strength or ability. In real fighting, simple, reliable, and strong weapons beat complex, unreliable, and weak weapons every single time. Marines learned this truth the hard way, through tough experience. They picked the weapon that would keep them alive and help them win. They chose the M1 Garand. When the last Marines left Okinawa in late June 1945, after the bloodiest battle of the Pacific War, they carried their Garands. Japanese Type 100 submachine guns were left all over the battlefields across the Pacific, abandoned by soldiers who were dead, rejected by captives who knew better, and already outdated before they were even widely used. The Marines had shown their choice through action. In the hardest fighting, They picked reliability over new inventions, power over rate of fire, real effectiveness over being modern, and substance over style. That choice proved the wisdom of American industrial planning. The foresight of ordnance officers who chose strength and reliability over other things. And most importantly, the judgment of individual Marines who knew that in combat, the best weapon is the one that works every single time. The M1 Garand was that weapon, and every Marine who carried one into battle understood it completely.